Welcome back to the channel where we dissect history not just through the lens of victory and defeat, but through the cold, ruthless mechanics of military capability. If you are new to the channel, know that here we explore the intersection of technology, strategy, and history through the most realistic simulation platforms available today. Today we won't merely observe a battle, we will conduct a true audit. We are opening Death's ledger to calculate the dry numbers of war. We aim to answer a question that has plagued generals and budget managers for nearly a century. The question isn't simply which weapon is more terrifying, but which method of warfare offers a better return on investment. When the goal is total destruction, how do you balance the budget between blood and iron? Imagine for a moment that you are a commander-in-chief tasked with wiping a strategic seaport off the map. The target is Caen, a vital logistics hub in France. This mission is critical, but your resources are not infinite. You are presented with two separate price quotes. They represent two diametrically opposed philosophies of total destruction. On one side, you have the traditional approach, the volume-based business model of the 1940s. This option relies on the legendary Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress. It is a strategy built on raw muscle redundancy and overwhelming numbers. To ensure the target is destroyed, you cannot send just one. You must send an entire fleet. We are talking about 20 heavy bombers, flying in a tight defensive box formation. This bid requires 200 well-trained crew members and 80 massive radial engines devouring thousands of gallons of aviation fuel per hour, and a logistics system stretching across the ocean. It is an industrial-scale effort designed to turn a specific coordinate into flat ground through saturation bombing. On the other side of the scales, you have the new age alternative, the precision asset model. Representing this option is the C-130 Hercules, a tactical transport aircraft converted into a delivery system for a single but devastatingly powerful weapon, the GBU-43/B, also known as the Moab, the mother of all bombs. This option is incredibly lean. It requires only one aircraft, a crew of just 4 people, and a single projectile guided by the Global Positioning System GPS. It promises a surgical erasure. Its premise is alluring in its simplicity. Why use 20 sledgehammers to smash a window, when one precisely aimed steel ball can finish the job more neatly? However, the economics of war has never been just about dollar bills. It is a problem of risk management and the price of failure. The experiment we are conducting today in Digital Combat Simulator, DCS, is designed to test these two doctrines against the brutal reality of a heavily defended sky. We will witness the B-17S attempting to drown the target in a rain of unguided steel, accepting the reality that for every bomb that hits a warehouse, 10 will fall on open fields or worse, residential areas. We will compare this to the modern gamble of the Moab, where all your capital is invested in a single asset. If that lone C-130 is shot down, your return on investment immediately drops to around zero. The target city of Caen lies silent below, unaware of the fate about to descend. This is a complex environment, a blend of industrial value and civilian lives. This is the final variable in our equation, collateral damage. In the crude calculus of World War II, the destruction of the surrounding city was often seen as an acceptable, plus a way to break the enemy's will. But in the modern era, collateral damage is a political burden that can bankrupt the legitimacy of an entire campaign. As we prepare to launch these simulations, ask yourself, is the efficiency of modern technology worth the fragility of putting all your eggs in one basket? Or does the old school method of overwhelming numbers still hold an undeniable brutal logic? Fasten your seatbelts, check your instruments, and prepare for takeoff. We are about to find out if more bombs truly bring more value, or if the future of warfare belongs to the precise and the singular. To understand the first candidate in this audit, we must strip away the romantic veneer of epic films and look directly at the industrial logistics of the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress. In the history of aerial warfare, few machines are as iconic. But from an economic perspective, the B-17 represents a philosophy of consumption through raw power. This is the volume-based business model of destruction. It operates on a principle familiar to any factory foreman. If your production process lacks precision, you must increase output to ensure results. In 1944, the Allies had no smart chips or laser guidance. They only had gravity, wind, and steel. To hit a specific building, they were forced to bomb an entire zip code. Let's analyze the asset package we are deploying in this simulation. We are not launching a single aircraft. We are unleashing a formation of 20 B-17Gs. This is called a combat box, a defensive formation designed to create an interlocking wall of machine gun fire against enemy fighters. But look at the cost sheet. Each aircraft is powered by 4 Wright R-1820 Cyclone radial engines. That is a total of 80 engines roaring together, burning a river of aviation fuel every minute they are airborne. The logistics tail required to keep these 80 engines turning, from oil wells in Texas to mechanics in England, is a massive investment from the national treasury. Next is human capital, the most expensive and fragile item on our invoice. A B-17 carries a crew of 10 pilot, co-pilot, navigator, bombardier, radio operator, and 5 gunners. In our formation of 20 aircraft, that equals 200 lives suspended at 30,000 feet. These are not just numbers, they represent thousands of hours of intensive training salaries and the invisible moral burden of the commander. When a general orders a strike like this, he is placing 200 souls on the roulette table of war. The distribution of risk is wide but harsh. If the formation flies into heavy anti-aircraft fire losses, can become a disaster. A 10% loss rate, a common figure in the early years of the daylight bombing campaign, means 20 men won't be coming home for dinner tonight. Now let's talk about the delivered product. Each B-17 in our simulation is loaded with 8,000 pounds of unguided conventional bombs. Multiplied by 20 aircraft, we are looking at a total payload of 160,000 pounds of high explosives. This is the essence of saturation bombing. The theory relies on the law of probability rather than precision. Bombardiers used the Norden bomb sight, an analog computer considered a marvel of the era, claiming it could drop a bomb into a pickle barrel from high altitude. However, in reality, under the pressure of combat with flak exploding around and smoke obscuring the target, that pickle barrel usually expanded to a 3-mile radius. The strategy here is like buying thousands of lottery tickets to ensure you win the jackpot. Most of the bombs will miss. They will fall into the water, they will plow open fields, or they will tragically fall on the wrong residential neighborhood. This is the inherent waste of the volume model. You are paying for 160,000 pounds of destruction just to ensure that perhaps 10,000 pounds actually strike critical port facilities. It is inefficient, it is indiscriminate, and it is incredibly expensive per unit of success. Yet, in the context of total war, it was the only viable option. The B-17 formation is a flying sledgehammer. It lacks finesse, but when it connects, it carries the weight of an entire national industry coming down. As we prepare to continue the simulation, remember, we are watching a methodology that accepts massive waste as the price of victory. The simulation is live. The formation of 20 B-17 crosses the English Channel and enters French airspace. Immediately, the ledger of war begins to accumulate the first operating costs: enemy anti-aircraft fire. The black puffs of smoke blooming around the aircraft are not mere atmospheric effects. They represent the operating tax of doing business in 1944 warfare. Every piece of shrapnel tearing through a fuselage or piercing a fuel tank represents immediate asset depreciation. The formation holds its spacing, a testament to the iron discipline of the crews, but from an efficiency standpoint, this approach is terrifyingly passive. They are flying straight into a wall of steel, taking damage without the ability to evade, simply hoping that the law of averages keeps enough planes in the sky to dump the lethal cargo. As the Caen target area comes into view, the lead bombardier looks through the Norden sight. This is the moment the transaction is finalized. The order is given, and the bomb bay doors on 20 aircraft swing open simultaneously. In seconds, 160,000 pounds of unguided munitions are released into the airstream. Visually, the spectacle is breathtaking, a waterfall of black blocks tumbling in sync, governed only by gravity and air resistance. But strictly speaking, the moment those bombs leave the racks, control is lost. The investment has been dispersed. Now we just wait to see the return. The impact is not a strike. It is an erasure. The ground below explodes in a sequence of rapid flashes like strobe lights, followed by a rolling sea of smoke and debris. The seaport facility, our primary target, is immediately and completely overwhelmed. Warehouses vanish. Concrete piers are pulverized into dust, and secondary explosions ripple through ammunition depots. If we score this mission based only on the binary metric of target destroyed or not, the B-17 formation has succeeded brilliantly. The seaport is gone. Mission accomplished. However, let's zoom out and conduct a waste audit. Look at the blast pattern. It is spread out, indiscriminate, and shockingly inefficient. A significant percentage of those bombs fell harmlessly into the water or plowed empty mudflats. That is literal capital thrown into the sea. Even worse, look at the southern edge of the target area. The carpet of destruction did not stop at the port fence. It spilled into residential neighborhoods, rows of houses, shops, and centuries-old infrastructure. have been leveled along with the military targets. In the cold calculus of modern war, this is what we call bad debt. The destruction of civilian infrastructure is a massive hidden cost. It breeds resentment, complicates post-war reconstruction, and provides propaganda fuel for the enemy. We used a sledgehammer to crack a nut, and in the process, we smashed the entire table. The B-17 model proved its power, but also exposed a deadly economic flaw: overkill. We achieved the goal, yes, but the ratio of explosives dropped to useful explosives is pathetically low. We paid for total destruction just to achieve one specific tactical objective. As the smoke clears over the ruins of Khan, the inefficiency is laid bare. We burned through a fortune in munitions and risked an entire fleet of heavy bombers just to ensure that a small fraction of power actually encountered the enemy. The question now shifts: could we have achieved the same tactical result, the destruction of the port, without paying this exorbitant surcharge of collateral damage and waste? To answer that, we must fast forward 60 years and look at a completely different kind of invoice. We leave the smoking ruins of 1944 and fast forward through 6 decades of technological inflation. We land in the modern era where the philosophy of war has undergone a radical corporate restructuring. The volume business model of the B-17 is dead, declared bankrupt by the unacceptable political cost of collateral damage and the escalating price of human life. In its place, we have the precision pivot. The goal remains the same, the erasure of the enemy, but the methodology has shifted from industrial-scale mass production to a high-value, bespoke delivery method. Welcome the Challenger in the red corner, the Lockheed C-130. Hercules carrying the GBU-43/B Massive Ordnance Air Blast, or MOAB. Visually, this setup looks deceivingly less impressive. Compared to the majestic formation of 20 flying fortresses, the C-130 is not a sleek bomber. It is a workhorse, a flying truck designed for logistics, not for lethal strikes. But don't let the aesthetics fool you. Economically, this is a masterpiece of efficiency. Look at the payroll. Instead of 200 crew members gambling their lives in corridors of anti-aircraft fire, the C-130 operates with a crew of just 4: captain, co-pilot, navigator, and loadmaster. In terms of human capital management, this is a 98% reduction in risk. We are risking 4 pensions instead of 200, and the grief of 4 families instead of 200. From a cold actuarial perspective, this is an undeniable upgrade in the life cost column of the war ledger. Next is the weapon itself. The MOAB is not merely a bomb, it is a smart asset. Weighing nearly 22,000 pounds, it is the largest non-nuclear explosive in the US arsenal. Unlike the dumb iron bombs of the B-17 era that only followed gravity, the MOAB is guided by GPS and steered by modern aerodynamic grid fins. It doesn't need to carpet an entire zip code to hit one warehouse. It only needs coordinates, allowing for a significant reduction in wasted explosives. Every ounce of chemical energy in this warhead is destined for the target, with 0% allocated to fields or fish in the surrounding harbor. Furthermore, the mechanism of destruction has evolved to maximize return on investment, ROI. The MOAB is a thermobaric weapon utilizing oxygen from the air to create a sustained shockwave. High heat, significantly more intense than conventional explosives. It is designed to sweep an area, crush structures, and collapse tunnels with a terrifyingly uniform pressure. It is the difference between firing 1,000 bullets, hoping one hits, and injecting a single dose of poison, paralyzing the entire system. Fuel costs are slashed. Maintenance hours are slashed. The logistical footprint is a fraction of the former B-17 fleet. On paper, the MOAB is the ultimate lean startup solution to the problem of port destruction. However, every investment carries a hidden risk, and the precision pivot is no exception. By consolidating all firepower into a single airframe and a single projectile, we have created a single point of failure, the classic scenario of putting all your eggs in one basket. The C-130 is slow, large, and defenseless. It lacks the defensive gunners of the B-17 and the speed of jet fighters. It relies entirely on air superiority, assuming the sky already belongs to us. If one enemy fighter intercepts this lone transport, or if a surface-to-air missile finds its heat signature, the mission fails instantly. There is no redundancy, no plane number 2 to pick up the slack. Efficiency is high, but fragility is equally frightening. As the C-130 rumbles down the runway in our simulation, we are not just watching a bombing run. We are watching an all-in gamble where efficiency is betting everything in exchange for survivability. The simulation restarts and the sky over the English Channel is clear again. We are running the modern scenario, but to make this a fair stress test for this economic model, we aren't sending just one C-130 Hercules. We send a flight of 5. In the world of logistics, redundancy is the only hedge against disaster. However, as the flight approaches the hostile coast, the inherent fragility of this lean model becomes terrifyingly clear. These are not B-17 flying fortresses built to take a beating. They are aluminum shipping containers with wings filled with fuel and a massive volume of explosives. They are high-value assets moving through a neighborhood that wants to bankrupt them. Almost immediately, the simulation throws the cold reality of war in our faces. The air defenses that the B-17S could nonchalantly ignore become a lethal threat to the transports. 2 minutes into the engagement, the first C-130 is hit. No dramatic dogfight, no heroic struggle. A single proximity fuse from heavy flak explodes near the right wing. For a B-17, this might just be a repairable damage entry in the maintenance log. For the C-130, it is a total asset liquidation. The fuel tanks ignite and the plane disintegrates midair. Millions of dollars in technology and 4 highly trained specialists vanish in an instant. This is the volatility of the modern market. Loss is total, not partial. Panic spreads through the formation. Another plane suffers an engine failure not from enemy fire but from the mechanical stress of pushing a transport airframe beyond design limits to evade radar. It is forced to abort, turning back to base. We are witnessing the rapid depreciation of the strike force. From 5 investors, we are down to 3, then 2 as the chaos of the battlefield fractures the formation. The pilots are pushing the throttles to the limit, reaching 300 knots. The airframe shakes violently, screaming against the laws of physics, while hauling a 20,000-pound bomb at treetop level. This isn't a bombing run, it's a desperate smuggling operation. Ultimately, only one plane manages to penetrate Khan's inner defensive belt. This is survivor bias in action. The entire success of the mission, the justification for the entire budget, now rests on the shoulders of one pilot and one loadmaster. The tension in the cockpit is palpable. They are flying a slow, fat target through a sky full of sharks. The pilot wrestles with the controls, banking hard to align with the port facilities. This is the fatal friction point of the precision model. The delivery mechanism is complex. Unlike the B-17, where you just open the doors and let gravity work, the Moab requires an elaborate extraction process. The pilot pulls the nose up, climbing, to release altitude. This maneuver turns the aircraft into a sitting duck for every gun on the ground. The rear cargo ramp lowers, exposing the gray sky. The drogue chute, the extraction parachute, deploys into the airstream. It inflates with a violent jerk, pulling the bomb cradle backward. In a split second, the plane's center of gravity shifts dangerously. If the bomb jams, the plane stalls and falls. If the chute fails, the mission is a write-off. The loadmaster is glued to the floor rails. With a lurch that shakes the entire fuselage, the massive weapon slides off the ramp. The C-130, suddenly 10 tons lighter, leaps upward like a cork released underwater. The asset has been delivered. The plane banks away, fleeing the area as fast as its turboprops will allow. The bet has been placed. The chips are on the table. Now we wait to see if the investment pays off. The GBU-43/B Moab is now in freefall, but unlike the Iron Rain of the 1940s, this is a guided descent. As the weapon gains speed, the grid fins at the tail spring to life, biting into the airflow to steer the 20,000-pound container toward a specific GPS coordinate. This is the difference between a shotgun blast and a sniper's bullet. There is no prayer. Here, only mathematics. The weapon autonomously adjusts its trajectory, compensating for wind drift, something that used to blow B-17 bombs off target by half a mile. It is a robot executing a contract. The impact doesn't happen on the ground, it happens just above it. The Moab is designed for an air burst to maximize the thermobaric effect. When the fuse triggers, it disperses a cloud of flammable aerosol, which is then immediately ignited. The result is not merely an explosion, it is a pressure event. A massive orange fireball erupts, towering over the harbor like a nuclear ghost, but the real work is being done by the shockwave. We witness a wall of overpressure expanding outward at supersonic speeds. It doesn't crater concrete structures, it rips them right off their foundations. Cranes, warehouses, docked ships. They aren't peppered with bomb craters, they are simply flattened as if a giant hand just swept the table clean. As the smoke clears, we can finally bring up the split-screen comparison to finalize the audit. On the left side of the screen, we have the aftermath of the B-17 strike. It is a scene of chaotic devastation. The port is destroyed, yes, but look at the price paid. The landscape is pockmarked by hundreds of craters looking like the lunar surface. Half the bombs missed the target, entirely turning the adjacent waters into a useless churn of mud and dead fish. More seriously, the residential neighborhood to the south is burning. We see houses with roofs blown off, streets turned to rubble. The B-17 method achieved the military goal, but it incurred a massive liability cost of destroyed civilian infrastructure. We spent millions to kill a $1,000 target. In the process, we created a humanitarian crisis. Now, look at the right side of the screen, the aftermath of the Moab. The contrast is truly shocking. The port facility itself has been erased. Destruction within the blast radius is absolute. Nothing survives that overpressure. However, look just outside the death zone. The residential blocks to the north and south are largely intact. Windows are shattered, certainly, and there is pressure on the structures, but the buildings are still standing. The boundary between target and non-target is sharp and clear. This is the clean balance sheet of modern warfare. By investing in precision, we have minimized the overhead of collateral damage. We used one bomb to do the work of 300. We destroyed the enemy's logistics without destroying the future of the city itself. The Moab, despite its terrifying power, proved to be the more economical choice. It provided exactly the amount of violence needed to close the contract with zero waste cost to the neighborhood. It is efficient, it is chillingly cold, and it validates the trillions of dollars spent on modern defense technology. But as we stare at these two different versions of hell, we must ask the final question. In the pursuit of a perfect, cost-optimized war, are we sanitizing the horror just enough to make repeating it too easy? We have reached the bottom line of the invoice. The dust over the Cairn sky has cleared, the engines have cooled, and the data from our digital audit has been finalized. Looking at the two receipts side by side, the conclusion seems mathematically obvious. The B-17 Flying Fortress, despite its legendary status, represents a business model that is bankrupt in the 21st century. It was a strategy born of necessity, relying on the horrific consumption of industrial output and human life to compensate for a lack of technological precision. It was inflationary warfare, spending more blood and more iron than the enemy until they collapsed. Deploying such a strategy today would be political suicide and economic malpractice. The waste is too high, the collateral damage too gruesome, and the risk to large crews is unacceptable in an era where every casualty is broadcast live for the world to see. On the other side, the Moab delivered via C-130. Hercules represents the harsh efficiency of the modern market. It achieved the same tactical goal, destroying the port at a fraction of the operating cost. We risked fewer lives, burned less fuel, and most importantly, we spared the surrounding city from total annihilation. This is the force multiplier effect of technology. We have moved from the era of the sledgehammer to the era of the laser scalpel. The ledger confirms that precision is not just a luxury, it is the ultimate cost-saving measure. By investing in advanced guidance and thermodynamics, a military can achieve strategic goals without the expensive and messy baggage of rebuilding an entire flattened city after the peace treaty is signed. However, as we close this file, we must acknowledge the dangerous psychology of this newfound efficiency. There is a paradox at play here. When you make war cheaper in terms of human risk and political fallout, you may inadvertently lower the threshold for starting one. The B-17 era was horrific, but its sheer scale made the price of war naked and undeniable to everyone. An entire nation felt the weight of sacrifice. With tools like the Moab and increasingly drones and autonomous systems, we are moving toward a future where conflict becomes abstract, distant, and sanitized. We are removing the human friction from the machine. If a nation can kill targets without risking its sons and daughters, and without bloody civilian massacres appearing on the evening news, does war become a product too easy to buy? The simulation we witness today is a microcosm of this evolution. We saw the transition from the brave, chaotic swarm of the past to the solitary, calculated strike of the present. Technology has changed, costs have shifted, but the basic transaction remains the same: the use of violence to force a political outcome. Whether it's delivered by a fleet of roaring radial engines or a single silent glider, the final bill will eventually come due. The question for the future isn't whether we can afford the financial cost of the bomb, but whether we can afford the moral cost of making the bomb too easy to use. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the economics of destruction. We hope this experiment has given you a new perspective on how to view military history, not just as a series of battles, but as the evolution of industrial capability and risk management. If you found value in this analysis, if you enjoyed seeing the ledger of war opened up, then please do your part to support the channel. Smash that subscribe button, Turn on notifications so you never miss a report, and share this video with fellow history buffs. We want to hear from you in the comments below. Do you think the risk-free warfare of the future is a good thing, or do we lose something essential when we remove the human element from the cockpit? Leave your strategic assessment below. Until next time, keep your eyes on the horizon and fly safe. Dismissed.